Hello, everyone. I am here to talk about my opinions and as well as the soundtracks for the film soundtracks, I should say, for the film 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I would like to add that when said I believe it was this during the Star Wars soundtrack video that I had made, that would be my last video on Star Wars. Did I say Star Trek again? Lord. Well, I'm talking about Star Wars, and I said it would be my last. Well, I was wrong, because I remember there was one Star Wars related feature anyway that I wanted to discuss. Uh, I'm not going to say what it is. I mean, you guys could probably figure it out, but I'm not going to say what it is. And I'll bring it up at some point. I meant to have it be this video, but I'm not prepared for it. So, frankly, I'm not prepared for this one either. But I think I could do more on the cuff than I could with, I'm almost saying the name. So, 2001: A Space Odyssey. I believe I saw that film when I was 10 years old. I know, I want to say it was a holiday, because I don't think I saw it when I was sick. I think it was a holiday. And surprisingly, I had the place to myself, except for my step-grandmother who was watching me that day. I don't remember where my sister was, probably with some friends. And I'd seen a clip of the film from Cinemania. That's what it was called, Cinemania's Microsoft Cinemania '95. It was from this was 1995. So we had gotten our first computer, which was a Gateway 2000. It came with a few CDs, one for wine tasting. Got a big kick out of that one, even though I didn't drink wine, but the guy was hilarious. Dinosaurs, which you can find on YouTube. You probably could find the wine tasting ones on YouTube. I haven't looked, but you probably could. And the Cinemania CD. In fact, that Cinemania CD introduced me to quite a few features that I never would have thought I would have had any interest in. They had clips from films, including Star Wars, as a matter of fact, specifically Ben's death scene. They had clips from Beckett, Ben-Hur, the '59 version, of some Rudolph Valentino. I think it was like called The Son of the Sheik or something. Life with Father. And if they weren't clips, in 2001, of course. If they weren't clips, they also sometimes had, in the description of the film, they would have little sound clips from some key dialogue moment, probably even some of the music. And 2001 had quite a few. I remember they even had a segment from when Dave is killing Hal, and I couldn't see anything. I could only hear stuff. So I'm hearing this heavy breathing and this very monotonous voice, or maybe, monotonous, I think is the correct word. Just my mind is going. There's no question about it. No clue what was going on. But the clip I saw was the docking of, what was that ship? It's the one that Haywood is on. And these clips were like probably a minute, 2 minutes in length most of the time. And this was just during the last stages of the docking. Oh, and as you can hear, I've got the music used for 2000. This is not the LP soundtrack. This is the 1996 Rhino release, which I'll show later. So yes, they and I don't necessarily remember if my curiosity was incredibly piqued, but at some point I decided to take a look at it, and it was also the first Stanley Kubrick film I'd seen, at least from beginning to end. Because I want to say before this time period, though I may be wrong, that I might have seen quite a few clips from the film The Shining when it was on TV. But I don't think so. I really don't know. And at the time I had no clue it was from the same director. So, 2001 was my first Stanley Kubrick movie I'd seen. And I sat through it somehow in one viewing. I don't think I even had to use a bathroom. So I'm just down there in the family room. watching this, and I believe it was like a 1980s VHS release. I believe 95, they were just now starting to release the film in widescreen for the first time, but the library had an old MGM VHS release. And first of all, I remember being totally confused by the Dawn of Man sequence. I'm going, this isn't space. And then, of course, the monolith sequence in there, and then just... I'm trying to figure if it's having an effect on these ape-like creatures. Heck, I'm even trying to figure out if the ape-like creatures were actual apes. The makeup was so good. I still think it's good. And the behavior of the actors is very convincing. Obviously, I don't follow that kind of. Well, okay, it's not obvious. You guys don't know my beliefs, but I don't go with that. But I still love the movie. Anyway, so then the space sequences. This is just difficult to say when you have a lisp. Finally occurred, and then my interests were a lot more piqued. Then of course I'm just seeing the banality of the dialogue. All right, I'll see you later. Have a good day. Thank you. Good to see you again. Hi there. Please use this one. Thank you. Please voice print identification. Thank you. Just thinking, what's with everyone thanking each other? And then all this kind of cringy fake laughter. However, when it came to the point where Leonard Rossiter, I believe is his name, though he's supposed to be playing a Russian, when Floyd speaks to him after speaking to his daughter, again, I'm very slow-brained back at that time. I did not pick up on him saying something that had been dug up on the moon. I wasn't following any of this very well. If I'd followed the film back then as well as my daughter even understands it mostly, plot-wise, basic plot-wise, and what I could follow. And, but I was just so slow. I did not pick up on what was going on. So when the moon sequence happened, I didn't realize that they were going to this, and then the meeting after the first the moon landing sequence, a meeting that occurred discussing how something was discovered, then the moon rocket bus. I didn't realize they were looking at something that, was 4 million years old, had been deliberately buried. I wasn't following it. But it was the visuals, and of course, the marvelous use of the music that just kept me focused. Then, of course, a monolith sees, and I recognize it, and then that terrible high-pitched beam you hear near the end of the sequence. Of course, I wasn't aware of the time periods too. 2010 says that sequence on the moon happened in 1999, and then the 2001 was actually the Jupiter mission, which, when you listen to the dialogue, it makes sense because it was 18 months prior, and so by 18 months it would be 2001. Anyway, no, they don't say the time, so you don't really know. You just figure this is all happening in 2001. Well, if you're an idiot like I was. Okay, maybe that may be belittling other people too. Forgive me. I'm thinking of myself when I said that. But if you didn't think of things as fast as I didn't, so. And I remember when they showed the discovery, and just how it kept going on and on and on and on, and I'm just going, where's the ending to this ship here? And then, of course, the incredible jogging sequence in the what was that main area of the like the living quarters or something of the Discovery. My mind just like, I remember just seeing going, whoa, he's running. How's he running sideways? What the heck's going on here? I can't see. I don't know how it's being done. It was only many years later that I figured, when I was learning film tricks and of the trade, and I still find this so shocking how they managed to do this, but how a whole entire set was created to rotate, and they can put camera in certain angles so that it looks like it's working, that he's working against gravity. That scene still impresses me. I absolutely, and the geniusness behind just a fully developed set, literally one large hamster wheel, with working lights and seats and everything. It's just incredible. Imagine how heavy it was to move that thing. So, these special effects are just keeping me intrigued, even though I'm totally confused. And of course, Hal's introduced. That's right. I remember seeing another clip from the film when I saw the. So no, I had to have been 11 years old, because from the film The Cure with what's his face, Joseph something. I can't pronounce his last name, but he plays Tim in Jurassic Park. In the scene, spoiler by the way, in the scene that he eventually sadly dies, his character, he and his buddy are watching 2001, and they show a clip from the film, and it has Dave in there. Goes, "All right, Hal, I'll go in through the emergency airlock." And so I think I kind of knew what to expect right there. So yeah, I must have been 11 years old when I saw the film then. And I somehow I'm sitting through all these lengthy sequences, especially when Frank's drifting, his body's drifting out in space, and the pod's going out there. But naturally, what really weirded me out the most and just left me shocked isn't the right word, but just totally stunned, was the Stargate sequence. And I remember just lying there. By that point, I've somehow not managed to fall asleep. It's getting a little dark outside because it's getting late in the day. My step-grandmother, I guess, just trusted that I was doing all right. And the whole Stargate sequence is happening. And I just remember my mouth hanging open. I didn't take my eyes off it the whole time. And finally, when it reaches the end of the Stargate sequence, I was just like this. And then by that point, I didn't know what the heck was going on. If you're, like me, didn't think very, very well, couldn't follow things very well. Let's just say, then the nebula of Dave as a star child at the end of the film, just I had no clue what I looked at. I didn't know what to think. The rest of my family were curious about the film too. Even though my mom and former stepdad were naturally from the time period, I guess they never saw it. They must have heard of it. But I decided that I liked enough. I wanted to, we decided to watch it. Why we watch it on a Sunday evening, I have no clue. Dumbest time of the world to watch it, especially when you got to go to school and they've got to go to work. But I just remember that they were wearing out by the middle of the movie. And my sister's just kind of moaning and moaning about the overuse of the sound effects. And then when it comes to the point where Dave is about to eject himself from the pod, and those very terrible alarm sounds come on, my sister just remembered like, it was so over dramatic. Anyway, so I think after that I didn't watch it again for years because I really didn't really know what to think. And by the time I want to say I rented it again maybe, but I honestly don't know. When we lived in Hoquiam anyway. Eventually when we moved to Olympia, I decided I was going to look at it again. By that point, the library had picked up a better print of the film. I don't remember if it was a widescreen release, but it was an updated VHS. And it had the overture, the intermission, and the original overture and the intermission, so I didn't even know there was one. So naturally, when the intermission happened, it's just like, oh, whoa, what? And entree, that's what it's saying. So, yeah, it had it. I want to say that it wasn't widescreen, though. But yeah, it was one with a cover, because every cover I found, it says letterbox at the top of this one, where it shows Dave Bowman's face with all the lights on his helmet, because I think it's from when he's supposed to be in that area dismantling Hal. And then beneath that photo, there's a picture of the moon with the monolith in there. So I saw that one. I don't think I really picked up on anything. I think I just, tried to take it for what it was. Maybe I had. Maybe by that point I did see 2010. First on TV and then rented it for myself. And maybe that's why I rented 2001. Maybe I saw 2010 on TV and then decided, let's rent 2010 and 2001 and 2010, and then I'll watch them consecutively. Maybe that's what happened. I don't remember. but I know that I was not in high school yet. So when I watch it again, and then just over the period of a few years, I just kept going back to it. So especially after watching 2010, which some people get real angry about because they explained most of it. Though I did read the book, I believe, by that point, which also explains some of it. Though the book's not much different, but different quite a few spots than the film. So, but it's still, the book's a little more linear in its description of the plot. And of course, in later years, I found out that the book came out after the film. I always thought the film was based on a book. So, anyway, then I decided finally one day I was going to own it. And the copy I got was in one of those, Stanley Kubrick collection VHSs. I think it said remastered and, or maybe digitally remastered. I think that's all it said at the top. Had that VHS for a very long time. Naturally, when DVDs came out and I started realizing how much picture I was missing, I never had a problem with widescreen. Just, I grew up with pan and scan, and maybe your occasional widescreen film. Like the first time I saw Spartacus, thank God, and it's the only way I've ever seen it since, was in its widescreen format. Which, of course, that's another Kubrick film too, and that's another one we'll talk about some other time. But my point is, though, I never seemed to have a problem with widescreen. And it seemed like even some films, that's the only way they made them available. So, but yeah, by the time DVD came around, I'm thinking, okay, I don't want this in full screen anymore. I want that super Panavision frame. So finally, at some point, I picked up the DVD and was very happy with it for years. Later, there was a 2-disc version that came out that had features, which I'd always wanted with that film. But then I rented it, I saw the features, and I'm thinking, I'll stick with my single-disc version. I feel like I'm not getting much. I know the first time I did see it on DVD, it was not the Warner Brothers release. MGM actually released their own version before Warner Brothers picked it up and started releasing it themselves. And it had an interview with Arthur C. Clarke at some sort of dinner or something like that, but that's all I had. And then when Warner Brothers released that feature was gone. So I had that, like I said, had that DVD for years, was happy with it. Then Blu-ray came around, and it was a film I eventually wanted to get on Blu-ray. Just never managed to. Just kind of, never seemed to either choke back because I picked something else, or just we didn't have the money. But I'm glad I didn't, because then, of course, 4K UHD comes around. And then the 4K UHD release happens, and I'm just hearing so much praise. So I think the first person I heard it from was Jeff Rousseau. Please tell me that's how I've said your name. I don't know if you ever see this video, Jeff, but forgive me if I've mispronounced it. In one of his older Films at Home videos. I may have heard it from him first. I don't know if Oliver Harper had said he had picked it up at the time yet. He may have. One of the two. I want to say Jeff. I think Jeff was the one I saw him from. And there was, and I think when I finally decided that, okay, let's upgrade to 4K. The 4K disc was kind of going in and out of circulation, but then finally I managed to get my hands on it. No, I'm sorry, I can't figure out on my phone if there's an option to make it non-mirrored image. From what I understand, there was like a special release of this. It kind of came with maybe a booklet or a card or something. Maybe it was still, I don't know. There was a special release of this. I didn't get it. This was what I got, but that's fine. And I hadn't watched a film for quite some time by that point. Just the reaction, or not just reaction, just the quality of the picture, the sound, the clarity of it, the way it filled the room. And I don't even have surround sound speakers, just a sound bar. The picture was incredible, is incredible. I mean, they weren't lying. Jeff wasn't lying when he said it was like the best 4K release of the year. Just incredible. And I couldn't get enough of it. Even the Blu-ray looks stunning, and I don't think the Blu-ray was from the same print. It might have been. It might be. It might have been. Excuse me. It might be. It did. The picture did go through an upgraded quality or something, and I think it even said as much on the special Blu-ray release. But oh, the 4K, just the way the colors were so much properly balanced, so much detail that I'd never seen before. It just felt like I was watching it for the first time. And I think that was the one. Was that the one I showed my daughter? Did she get to see that for the first time? I think it did. Excuse me. I think it was. I almost showed it to her on DVD, but she was too young to really appreciate it, even though she sparked some interest. She was younger than I was, but she got bored and walked away. So I think when I showed it to her and she actually sat through the whole thing, it was the 4K release. She's so lucky. She gets to see all these amazing, incredible films most of the time in 4K for the first time. And I haven't watched that film in a while, but I want to. I love the way that film looks. The visuals, I always found stunning. I'd have dreams about them. I still sometimes have dreams. I mean, not really, not as much as before, but just, kind of being in this kind of surreal environment, very kind of just floating on something all the time. And it got to the point where I even read the other books, the sequel books of the 2010, 2061, 3001. They don't quite get that atmosphere as much as Stanley Kubrick could, but still, they're worth the read. Well, not 2061. I remember when I read it the first time, I don't remember my reaction. I didn't remember really anything from it, though it did seem to repeat stuff that was in 2010, the book 2010. But then I finally I'm reading all three books of my daughter right now. I haven't gotten to 3001 yet, but reading through 2061 was such torture. Just torture. The plot bounces all over the place, and Dave and Hal don't really come up until the very end of the book, and everything's so convoluted, and it's just a mess. Terrible book. So you wouldn't miss anything if you skipped it, because I think the details aren't even carried over to 3001. But anyway, yeah, just absolutely love the film. Need to look at it again. Sequel, I do like the sequel. And it's even got its own kind of visual palette that deserves much appreciation. Corny at times, yes, not as good as the book. In fact, makes some changes from the book that I wish it didn't. But I kind of want to give some appreciation to it because I think 2010 is what really kind of got me looking at 2001 again. So that's my opinion about the film 2001. Now onto the soundtracks, which I'll probably have a lot more to say about. Well, no, I say quite a bit about 2001. So I believe it was in the 1996 release of by Rhino Records that stated that Alex North, who had scored Kubrick's film Spartacus, was brought in to do an original score for 2001. And what material he wrote was all thrown out. Kubrick didn't want it. For that matter, it turned out that Kubrick never really probably wanted one in the first place. He was just fulfilling studio wishes, even though he kind of was by that point working on his own. I think the studio still had some a very minimal grip on what he did, but in the end, it was Kubrick's call, and which frankly was for the best. But that doesn't mean that I don't think Alex North's score doesn't deserve any appreciation, because it does. You can tell when he's trying to when his music is trying to sound like Richard Strauss's "Thus Spake Zarathustra," with his own cue for the sequence with the bones. I mean, it's unmistakable. You can it even ends with the organ. It builds up with its own its kind of fanfares, though with a bit of syncopation that doesn't quite work. But the first time I'd heard anything of that music was the 1991 re-recording that performed by the National Philharmonic Orchestra, conducted by Jerry Goldsmith. Something that Alex North knew was going to be happening, but sadly he died before he could see any part of it. And frankly, it's too bad he did, because I have a feeling that it would have turned out much better than what did turn out. The CD is barely over 30 minutes long, which is not the problem, but I think it needed to be longer, because when the actual film scoring sessions were released on Entrada years later, the cues, some of the cues were a lot longer. There was alternate cues, and it's obvious that Jerry Goldsmith did use the alternates instead of the longer ones, for at least for the moondocking sequence anyway. Or not moondocking, the docking sequence anyway. There was an alternate ending to the music that was meant for the battle between the two clan of ape creatures over the waterhole before the famous bone cut. The ending for the original film sessions was a lot more aggressive, whereas it seems like with Jerry Goldsmith they added an ending on there that wasn't there. And I think that might have been Christopher Palmer who did that. I think he tweaked some of the orchestrations, or maybe added an ending to make it as a more listenable experience in his mind. And he even added a cue in there that didn't belong there. The last cue, which is labeled Entree, is not even from his 2001 score. Apparently, it's from his North's score for the miniseries Africa. Something I don't know if I'll ever see. I don't think it's ever been released. I know that there's been a soundtrack release of it, but I kind of don't want to purchase it. I think it's still available. I don't really want to purchase it until I could see the miniseries or mini documentary or whatever you want to call it. And it when you listen to it, it just sounds out of place, and it's kind of cringy sounding too. However, that music, the cue you hear, North had used some of that music for the chase sequence, if you want to call it a chase sequence, in Good Morning Vietnam, when Williams' character is chasing that boy, trying to find out why he committed this, caused some sort of explosion that happened midway through the film or something, and you hear North's music used for that quick chase moment there. I thought it was a bit over dramatic. I mean, I didn't care for the whole film. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't like Good Morning Vietnam. I know a lot of people love that film. So anyway, I did at one time own the the re-recording of Alex North's score, and listened to it for quite a few times. I remember though, because I like reading liner notes, and that booklet would actually have a lot of packed information in there. And when I first got the CD, I wasn't even done reading the booklet yet before the CD ran out, or finished. So it got to the point where I'm just literally reading this liner notes, because I try and read the liner notes, see if I could beat the CD, and sometimes I finish just as the cue would end, the CD would end. And, got some enjoyment out of it. Like I said, though, I had learned this from the 1996 Rhino release of 2001: A Space Odyssey. We'll get to that in a moment. Now we'll get to the actual, music used in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that's the music by György. Let's just say his last name, Ligeti, the Hungarian composer. Ligeti, Richard Strauss, Johann Strauss, and wasn't there a third one? Yes, Khachaturian, Aram Khachaturian. So when the soundtrack, for the soundtrack album, I received a copy. I received an LP of it in a collection of LPs that a friend of mine gave me, and that's of course this one right here, and which is a fold out, has a few paragraphs about the film, then a few paragraphs from the of the tracks, what pieces that they chose, and very little description of what the music conveys or something, or it more actually just describes the sequence of how it happens in the film. It doesn't really talk about the music at all. It does say who performed it though, so that's a good thing. And I love listening, frankly, to this on LP. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because of the way it's prepared for album. They do have. Let me see. Yeah, it does begin with the Thus Spake Zarathustra, or also Sprach Zarathustra, whichever you prefer. But the version that the film uses is not the same as what they use on the LP. I'll be having to turn that off for a moment because there's going to be dialogue at the end for the film, and I want it mixing in. Yeah, this is a weird piece you hear. You don't hear like this in the film. It's heavily altered and edited, done by Kubrick himself. Actually, there's one thing I wanted to mention before I continue with the soundtrack. Now that I mentioned Kubrick's handling of the piece, which Ligeti sued him for, by the way. With the special effects, I wanted to mention this too. Stanley Kubrick only won one Oscar in his life, despite the several nominations that he received. And frankly, I think he should have won at least, if he didn't deserve more than one, I think he should have won one of the ones he was nominated for Dr. Strangelove, because I think he was nominated for both writing and directing. If it couldn't be, one or the other, I don't care. He deserved an Oscar at least once for his writing or directing, and he never got it. He only got one for special effects, and there's a problem with that. He was only the director of the special effects. He did not create the special effects, and frankly, he was the only one who got the award. None of the actual special effects artists got the award, which included Douglas Trumbull. You see, I should have. There were two other people involved, and the Academy didn't even include them. Of course, since now the rules have changed. But it's a shame, too, because, Trumbull says, in a way, it's kind of sad that, because he recognized that was the only Oscar Kubrick ever received. However, Trumbull, it would have been his only Oscar, too. Despite the fact he was nominated for Close Encounters and Star Trek, I don't know if he was nominated for Blade Runner, he never won an Oscar, competitively. He did receive an honorary award, I remember. I forget what for, but I do remember reading he received an honorary Oscar. So he wasn't totally without the honor. But let's face it, though, he deserved it with, especially, if Kubrick had to get one, they deserved one. But some reason he got the sole award for, sole credit for that. Even though he may have had a hand in how the hate were handled, but he didn't create them. So back to the music now. The version that was used of Thus Spake Zarathustra in this is performed by the Berlin Philharmonic and conducted by Karl Bohm, I think is how you pronounce it. The one used in the film and was later released on the 1996 release. Does it say on the back here? Nope. Was conducted by Ernest Bauer with the Südwestfunk Orchestra. And I remember doing some reading. There was I think it was because over some licensing thing about that, where MGM could only do a different recording because they had a contract with Deutsche Grammophon, which a lot of the music was supplied. But because it says right here, MGM Records in association with Deutsche Grammophon, and the version they used in the film was not licensed by MGM, I believe. So they couldn't release it on an LP. And so anyway, with the Requiem for Soprano, Mezzo-Soprano, two mixed choirs and orchestra, which was the Getty piece and the music they used for the Monolith. It's not complete on this album. It's edited down. I think it's edited to what you hear when you hear it the first time during the Dawn of Man sequence. And I do believe that's the only one that has. Okay, that's not entirely true. The Blue Danube, well, it's kind of split in two ways with this. It's weird how it is with this release. The only two pieces I had some tampering with were the Requiem and the Blue Danube. While the Blue Danube, you do hear it all the way through, you don't hear it all the way through from beginning to end. They have about, I think, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Let me see. About close to 7 minutes on here from beginning, and then it just kind of fades out. It's very awkward. Then when they do put it on the second side of the LP. It doesn't come in till it's like the second to last track, and it just immediately it doesn't even start from where they faded off. It's just all of a sudden it just blump bump blump bum, 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 bum. You know that part wherever you want to sing in the. It just starts that way in the LP. It's kind of abrupt, and then it plays through to the end. Not to me. They just should have. I don't know. It looks like there's still plenty of room. It could have finished. It didn't have much longer to go, but that's the way it is. It's probably my only gripe with the LP, even more than the fact that they don't have the complete Requiem. Then in 1996. I'm just checking. Yeah, 1996. This brilliant release came out. This is how I first heard anything soundtrack-wise of the film, and which is fantastic because the way the soundtrack was done, they tried to roughly have the music edited in the way you hear it in the film, and then as bonus you get to hear. Well, okay, that's not entirely true. Some pieces you hear in their entirety because that's how they were released on the album, like the Lux Aeterna or Atmosphere. No, not even Atmosphere. See, it's perplexing. In one way, it's good. Another way, it's kind of a frustration. But I still favor it over any other release. So they have a shortened version of Atmospheres as the overture. Then they have the film, the version they used for Thus Spake Zarathustra, the film. Now here's where things get interesting. They do have the Requiem after Thus Spake Zarathustra, but they have the whole piece in its entirety. So it's like you hear it when you hear it at the beginning of the Stargate sequence, where the choir gets more intense and a little more aggressive, and the music starts being a little more high pitched. Or high volume, whatever you want to say, when it's just a little more climatic. They have the whole piece there, goes on and unedited. Then they have the Lux Aeterna, the Blue Danube. It even says excerpt as you hear it in the film, where it cuts off right at the end of the docking sequence. That's how it does here in the CD. Then they have the Lux Aeterna, the edit that you hear in the film. Where and it just kind of fades out, right where you hear it fade out in the movie. The Gayem Ballet Suite, Adagio, they have the whole suite there, unedited. It's the Jupiter and Beyond sequence that I'm disappointed with, because, they have it edited as it is in the film, with the exception of the Requiem. Instead of having it play through completely like it does in the film, they only play the edited version, like probably as much as you hear on the LP, which is weird. So it seems like they should have done that for the third track when you first hear the Requiem, when the monolith is introduced, and then put it in its entirety in the Jupiter and Beyond suite. But whatever the case, they didn't. You don't notice it too well because of the way it seeks to atmospheres. It's a very smooth seek. I think it's rather clever. And with the way they have atmospheres on here too, they have it as you hear it in the film, where it seems to play up into the end of the piece, but then there's an edit and it cuts back to not so much the beginning of the piece, but after the kind of very quiet build up, and then you hear that it kind of sounds the best way I can do it. When it cuts back to that during the sequence where he's like flying all these over all these alien landscapes, and then adventures, and it says altered for film, and it is how you hear it in the film, kind of very, almost like you're hearing it from a hallway. You're playing in some room in the back, way in the distance, but heavily edited. Especially with all the crazy vocals and everything, he must have really done a lot of chopping in there, because they have the unaltered adventures, the one that you hear in the film, here on the CD release as a supplemental material. Let me tell you, when I first heard this piece, everyone was home, and I'm in my room listening to the music, and the vocals are a lot more prominent, and then all of a sudden you hear this, whoa! scared the crap out of me. And then that happened several times throughout the piece. There's all these jumps of just people vocalizing weird vocal sounds, and even the name of the orchestra or group that performs it, it's very I can't pronounce it. And all of a sudden, and it says the Institute of something. And did they go to a hospital and record sounds or something? I didn't realize that Institute could be used for an orchestra or group name. But there's only few moments where you actually hear as they would have hear them out. Well, that you can't say as they were in the film, but you can tell what portions were used in the film. But when it comes to all the vocalizations that you hear when Dave is walking through the bathroom, I can't figure out which sections those are in here. All I can figure is that Kubrick took like bits and pieces, really kind of threw them in a blender or something, and then just came out with one. Obviously, he didn't do that, but just kind of clip here, clip here, clip here. It just didn't seem to matter. And he did it without Ligeti's permission. So Ligeti was understandably not happy about that. Whew, throat's getting dry. So, but that's on that release. And it's followed by some very, very good choice sections of dialogue. The cue is just called HAL 9000. It's about a 9-minute put together sequence of, from the BBC footage that they show in the film. They combine that with what the news host questions him, and then his answers to key moments in the film, where it kind of contrasts. I think it's rather clever. It kind of contrasts what Hal said in the news special to what actually later happens in the film. Or maybe not even, or foreshadows, because like the last scene they play from the clip, the news special, even though it's edited, was when they ask Dave if Hal has genuine emotions, but then they have an edited, they have Dave's response edited where he goes, well, he acts like he has genuine emotions, but as to whether or not he has real human. I can't remember the word for word dialogue, but then I don't think anyone can truthfully answer. And then it cuts to him being dismantled, Hal being dismantled. So just very kind of contrasting and foreshadowing. It's very, very well done. So there's that marvelous release. Was a very detailed liner note booklet. And with some gratitude to Ligeti, because I guess he allowed them to put that in the 96 release, since I'm sure they paid his dues, because I think he didn't paid any dues or anything. So that's a marvelous CD, and I copied it onto cassette tape. For whatever reason, I just never asked for my own copy. I figured, the library has it, I'll just copy it. And of course, they didn't have CD burners at the time, and I had that tape for years, and I listened to it many times. Finally, when I wanted to see CD release, this release here was very difficult to get. But I think I managed to get this brand new, or if anything like new, but I think it was brand new, with the slipcover and everything. See, in fact, when I got it from the library, the slipcover wasn't there, so this is what I saw. And I've kept it in very marvelous condition. It's one of my favorite releases. So many years later, that release is gone. I mean, it's still around, but it's hard to get. And there were other versions out there. And I don't know what exactly I thought of, what my thoughts were. I think because the LP, which I got my hands on, before these later releases, had the cues unedited. I was kind of wondering. I was kind of thinking, I wish I had these unedited. I mean, I probably could just dig out the recordings and then just put them on my own CD, but I never did that. And then many years later, Water Tower Music had this release. Very nice. I love that corridor shot. Very good cover. However, this one even comes with its own gripes. So it has all the pieces here, all except one, in their complete playthrough. But there are two things that are different. First of all, for the prelude, the Thus Spake Zarathustra, they did not use the version used in the film. They used the version used on the LP. but I can live with that. It's a decent enough recording of it. The Requiem for soprano, mezzo-soprano, two mixed choirs, and orchestra is not complete. They use the 4-minute edit that is on the LP. Something. Why would you do that? The Blue Danube is the one that I was really happy about. Finally, played through completely unedited, and not 2 parts or anything like that. Now, the Lux Eterna one, this one's a bit interesting. The version used here is not what you hear in the film, but it is used in the 2010 film because you hear the Lux Eterna during the prologue of the film, and then as kind of like sound effects for when they show the sequences in space that aren't scored by David Shire. Specifically, you hear it when... No, not... Sometimes you hear this ooh sound, these kind of weird sound effects they add, almost like kind of manipulated slide whistle sounds, when they show the space, when they show the ships from outside. But I think you hear it... No. Now I know. You hear the Lux Eterna in 2010 when they show the monolith, other than the prologue sequence. Anytime the monolith is shown, you hear the Lux Eterna. But it's not it's a different recording, not the one that 2001 uses. The one used for 2010 and the one that they put on this release is performed by Chor des Norddeutschen Rundfunks and conducted by Helmut Franz. I forget the one used in 2001. Is Clytus Gottfold conducting the Stuttgart Scala Cantorum. It's a lot more easy to read. Yeah, and it even says right here, full-length version from original MGM soundtrack album. Anyway, but yeah, I thought it was decent enough. However, what I don't like on here is the recording they have of Adventures. It, again, like Lux Eterna, is not the one used in the film. And this performance is incredibly weak. Incredibly quiet. I mean, I don't know who mixed this, but it's weak. It didn't scare the crap out of me when I heard it. I just, not a full kind of guttural laugh or, just, it's just pathetic. Forget about who it's performed by. I can't pronounce these names, and this one's just as difficult to pronounce as the other one. But the point is, what's used on here is not the same as what's used on here and in the film. Actually, there is an LP release of this that was released from, not this same one, not this LP release. Mondo Records had their own very, decorative cover and everything. Minty showed it in one of his videos. I forget which video, because I don't think it was one featuring his LPs. But I think it's cost a lot of money mainly for its art on the record album, on the album cover, more than anything. But they use this same program for their release, not the way it follows in the actual film soundtrack. But back to Alex North's score. So, yeah, for years, everyone had to be satisfied with that rather pathetic release from Varese with Jerry Goldsmith's re-recording. Not that the performance was bad. The National Philharmonic Orchestra did perform the music brilliantly, and Jerry Goldsmith, he brought out the sound, Alex North's style and sound. But it's just a lot of the cues were edited. Of course, had inappropriate use of what the entree, which didn't even belong there. I just know kind of for years, I kind of just didn't really listen to it that much. Then Entrada did what we all been waiting for. They got their hands on the actual sessions from some tape that at the time she was alive, but she was just hanging on. But Alex North's widow, she had They even mentioned the liner notes that she had a tape of the Varese re-recording. So at the time, I remember thinking, well, why didn't they just release that? Whatever the case was, they didn't. And finally, Entrada, Douglas Fake, who sadly is dead too, who died quite a few years ago. But gosh, yeah, all these people just dying. He managed to get Alex North's widow, Anna, that's it, Anna North, to finally let him produce a limited edition. And first of all, the score was recorded in England at Anvil of Denham, where that would be like John Williams' go-to place before it sadly was demolished in the early 80s, or 1980 actually, I think. Not recorded by Eric Tomlinson, though. It was recorded by Ken Cameron. I think he was like their chief recording engineer there, because Eric Tomlinson, he had come from CTS Studios in Bayswater. Though Eric, I think, would become the chief engineer there. But point is, though, it was conducted and orchestrated by his orchestrator, Henry Brandt. And the space station docking sequence is so much longer, has some even kind of weird moments where like the music breaks from the type of waltz scene it was trying to imitate from the Blue Danube, or kind of waltz style. But there's this, let me just, the words are printed, you might as well use them. Okay, let me see here. As well as a brief interlude as the sleeping float is glimpsed and a stewardess grabs. Okay, never mind. Maybe it doesn't. But point, there's these kind of weird breaks in there. At first, when you listen to it, it seems a bit distracting, but you learn to kind of appreciate them as you listen to it. And then you hear he did do another edit of Docking, but it was much, much shorter, and it's really what you hear on the re-recording, except at a faster speed. What's funny is that after the end of this take, you hear a voice go, "First one's the better." I don't know who's talking, but this is a marvelous recording to own. And the Eat, Meet, and Kill, the cue that I was talking about, where the two ape creatures are battling over the water hole before the bone cut, ends on this very aggressive timpani kind of rumble, whatever you want to call it, compared to Goldsmith's release. I don't know why I'm pointing. I don't even own it anymore. But compared to Goldsmith's release, that just cuts off after a little piccolo chirp. And so, I was very excited to get my hands on that. Again, I probably listened to the 2001 original soundtrack program a lot more than it, but I love that recording. I kept the re-recording for years with it, but then I found that I just don't like listening to it anymore. Sorry. So I gave it away. And you can easily hear it on YouTube. I think it's YouTube Music has it. It's got an interesting cover, I'll give it that much. Very surreal, very like kind of as if you were just on this crazy planet. Honestly, probably one would associate it with an acid trip. Not that I would know what that is, but still, I do remember the Bob Peak painting that was on the cover of the 2000. I think it was the last one he did before, sadly, he died. I forget where I was going with that. Yeah, the cover was nice. Okay. I think really that's all I have to say about this marvelous film and its incredible soundtrack, both the original and unoriginal material. Okay, forgive me. Both the original material composed for it and the material used for the film. That itself was original, but what I didn't mean to say it's unoriginal. Let's just say the concert recordings. And definitely a favorite of mine. Very happy I kept going back to give it a chance. It does something to you. It just makes you. I know there's a whole silly philosophy crap behind it, which I don't go for that. It's just visually it just leaves something in your mind. the way the everything flows, you know, because it's not zip zap space travel. It's very real. You know, when you're out in space, you know, gravity works against you because, well, first of all, there is none, but just you're free floating all the time. So you have to keep, you know, you have to always have to move slowly. I mean, the film Gravity even showed that really well. But my throat's getting dry, and I'll try and have the other Star Wars associated film that I'll be discussing ready, notes for it next time. I'll make sure to watch it and write down anything. And yeah, I still I doubt. Oh, I would like to point out something too. In my Empire Strikes Back video, I had mentioned that I'd only seen one Irvin Kershner movie, and that was RoboCop 2. I had entirely forgotten, because I'd seen it well before I made the video, that I had seen Never Say Never Again, which was, you know, more watchable compared to RoboCop 2, but, you know, still not like not the best kind of attempt to make a James Bond movie. Though Sean Connery still was fabulous to watch. And what's her name, who played the bad girl? That was hysterical. Okay, well, that's all I have for now. I will try to have another video made some point. I can't say soon because my schedule is always so busy. See you later.